Hi, guys. It is Laura and Jamie with It's Okay Until It's Not. And we are so excited to be back. I don't know if you noticed, but we had taken a little break. And we're going to be talking to you today about mental health, which we had to take some mental health time for our little break to collect ourselves, to get reorganized, and because we always want to come to you bringing our best selves, centered and from a state of mental health. So this brings us to our next episode. We have no idea which one it is.
Yeah, number.
I'm taking guesses. My guess is 9. I don't know
Okay.
if you have a guess, Jamie, you want to throw out there?
I was
And
actually gonna say 10, but I don't have any idea. So that was just a roll of the roll of the
super
dice.
exciting, guys, and we've had a lot of feedback that we've really appreciated, and we're having so much fun with this. Jamie and I would be talking about these topics anyway, so why not
Mhm.
to share them with you guys so that we can all grow together. Before we just aired this episode, Jamie and I were talking about what's going on collectively. And do you care if I share that now,
Not at
Jamie?
all. Mm-mm.
Okay. So we were talking about how we're getting ready to move into the age of Aquarius. And I can't really give you specifics. I think each age is like 800 years, maybe longer, shorter, but it's a span of our entire lifetime. That I do know. And a lot has been coming up, right? We have a pandemic. We've had pretty big deal, but a
Yeah.
lot has been coming up for all of us. And we both believe and have seen in our friends and in our family some mental health issues coming up. And we wanted to talk about that today, letting go of the shame around it for sure, what that means, and how at some point in our life, I think we all deal with some different mental health issues. Don't you think, Jamie?
Yeah, I think just the words that you're saying, mental health, is so stigmatized because it's literally the health of your mental being.
Of
Like
your brain. Yeah.
people talk about physical health all the time, and it's a good thing, right? Like it's always on the top of their New Year's resolutions list. They want to be in better physical health. They know that disease potentially can stem from your physical being, but I'll tell you that it's also at least a third of your mental well-being. And if we can't talk about mental well-being as normally as any other well-being, then here's part of the problem. This is why I think it needs to be unstigmatized and said that it's we can all agree we have a mind,
Yeah.
right?
And I think part of unstigmatizing it is talking about it. And you know what came up for me when you were talking about mental health versus physical health? And we can
Mm-hmm.
talk about physical health. Well, we do things all the time for our physical health. We talk about our diet, we talk about exercise, we talk about rest, but we don't really talk about the things that we need to do daily for our mental health.
Right.
And it needs to be a daily practice, or the same as our body, we will it'll fall apart, and it will stop working to help support us. We'll always be chasing to feel better type of thing.
Yeah, here's a fun little study that's been becoming more mainstream more often than not, and it'll tie together in a second. But the doctors are now understanding that um, most of physical health starts in the gut, but
Mm-hmm.
the way you digest things like your food is also the same way that you digest things as far as what's going on in your life, like thoughts and like energies and like feelings and emotions. So if you can't digest the way that life comes at you, which is how we are on a mental capacity, then there's no way that you're going to be able to digest the food appropriately that's also coming in. And lots of people can understand that those two are associated because when I'm sad, I eat. When I'm sad, I don't eat.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm angry, I do whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that you can't have one without the other. They affect each other. So they're intertwined. You can't go on a direct mission of I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna, be 20 pounds lighter in 2020 and then not deal with the psychological components that are
Right.
keeping you
Why are
from
you
ever
twi-
being right.
Right. Why are you 20 pounds heavier to begin with?
Or
And
why do
getting
you
to
want to get to be 20 pounds lighter? Like,
and
what
even
is
better,
it?
right? But keep digging to those roots.
Right.
I remember, and if you guys have been listening to this podcast, my son William, when he was a year old, it was the day after Christmas, suffered an anoxic brain injury. Very, very traumatic. And I realized after that, I was working a lot with my acupuncturist, really weekly at that time to help keep me just in somewhat of a balance, right? And I remember talking to her and about how don't know what was going on. I was having to have a banana split every night before I went to bed. And I've just never been much of a sweet person. I mean, I'll have a treat, but it's never been in my mind, like have treats or don't. And every night, and it was a good banana split. I mean, I'm talking, I had the chocolate, the fudge, Spanish peanuts, I had whipped cream, I had cherries, like the whole works every night. And she looked at me and immediately was like, that's because you're craving the sweeter things in life right now, Laura. And I was like, of course. Of course, I'm filling in that void because I was in so much pain, and I was doing it with a banana split. That's, some people choose a cocktail. I happened to also be pregnant during my most painful time. Right. So I did not pick up a cocktail. I picked up a banana split.
Right. I did a class a couple of years ago at a yoga studio I was managing, and it was called The Psychology of Food. And if you can just think back to your earliest days, it comes down to when you get a good report card, you go get dinner with the family. When you go to grandma's house, you get to bake cookies. When you go out on a date, you meet for food. When you're on a breakup, you go meet the guys or the girls and commiserate over food, beers, or wings or whatever, like, or ice cream and pizza. Like it's so common to supplement our mental health with external things instead of actually sitting with the pain of what's going on. And so I'll just quickly segue this into lots of people seek antidepressants, and I don't poo-poo medicine by any stretch of the imagination. I think that there is a certain need for it at any time. It's like, I get it. But I'm going to say that just because you take an antidepressant doesn't mean that those emotions that you are trying to avoid feeling or overwhelming you right now aren't still there. So you get numb to the current events. And I feel like it's sometimes imperative to get through whatever it is that you're going through, be it, a huge tragedy or whatever. But at some point you have to look at it. And I know somebody in my family who, after 30 years, decided to wean herself off of antidepressants. And she was an absolute miserable human being because her pot overflowed with all of the stuff she'd been stuffing down for 30 years. Right. And I said, they're not gone. You just haven't been able to look at them. And then so I feel like for people, if they're paying attention to this now, they can either choose to go back, everything stems from something. But if you start today with what's causing stress today, and 2020 has done a doozy of bringing all of our stuffs up, right? Because things have changed, whether we like it or not. And then if you take the time to pick things off little by little, then it's, at least it seems it's within our control. And I think that as humans, that's what we'd like to have, is some kind of control instead of the absolute overwhelm of it hitting us over the back of the head like a 2x4,
Yeah. I have a family member as well that this family member lost her spouse and immediately went to antidepressants. It's now been 37 years, and she's tried multiple times to wean herself. And when she gets down to a certain dose, she can't take everything that's coming up because it keeps building. I always imagine it like one of those Instapots. And then when you let the pressure out, it just goes right. And depending on how long and how much you stuff is how much steam is going to come out. And I don't know about you, but I've been burnt by the steam before.
Oh yes.
And when so the segue, my daughter's been dealing with some mental health issues, and I hate to even use the word issues. It's just that there was a lot that built up. The pressure pot went poof, and it was like, whoa, this is too much. We're balancing between so many different things. And I feel that I was really blessed to find a therapist that agrees with me on the medication issue. And so it's been really nice for my daughter and I, because it wasn't me suggesting we're going to meditate every day. It was actually the counselor. We actually have to do a little log. So there's some accountability to it as well. And
Yeah.
I have to tell you, it's made such a difference for me too, because me as the adult, me as the teacher, me as the crystal healer, I teach it, I prescribe it, I tell everybody about it, but having a log and accountability has just changed everything. It's
Sure.
changed the amount of time, um, knowing that it's going to help my daughter as well. I mean, I already feel more centered and peaceful, and we've been doing it for just a week.
Yeah. I
Just
mean,
a week.
we don't need studies to tell us, but they do
Mm-mm.
show that meditation is absolutely life changing, and it's intangible. And I think that's the problem that people have with it, is that if they consider it a bad session, or they couldn't get centered, or they couldn't stop their thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
all of these things, they think that it is not a productive act because they
Yeah.
have all these labels addressed to it. But the accountability to it is what saves our lives.
The
It's not what
accountability.
Yeah, and it's not
For
what
me,
happens
yeah.
in meditation, it's what meditation prepares you for in
Yeah.
your real life. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
I'm setting myself down now to know that it's a muscle, right? Like you're training yourself to find the pause, to deeply breathe, to be present and current in whatever is existing
Mm-hmm.
right now. So when you're in your everyday bustle, that when something tragic, traumatic,
Mm-hmm.
etc. happens, you can respond instead of react. And that's all we ask for in this life. That's
It's all
it.
we asked for. The the other thing I love that her counselor told her was, because apparently, first of all, with our youth right now, it's very cool. They've taking the pills very cool, and it's almost like a subculture for them to say, did you take your happy pill? Are you taking a happy pill? And doing my own research and going down the rabbit hole, this is a huge thing that the kids are seeking. So what I loved was, she said 30 minutes of exercise is equivalent to one Zoloft.
Wow.
One, so they're just the exact equivalent. And then you keep going, only adding 5 more minutes. That's the equivalent of two,
Right.
right? So we can actually, with our diet and our exercise. Now, the kicker is, of course, it's really hard to exercise for 30 minutes when you're way down low.
Mm-hmm.
For my daughter, it's easier because she's in competitive swim. So they're exercising. We've just had to add 30 minutes on her off day,
Right. I'll
which
say that
again has helped me.
an interesting exercise for me was my trauma. So
Mm-hmm.
for me to seek another sort of somatic, which is nonverbal nervous system support, uh, for the traumas that I've had has
Mm-hmm.
been its own chore. And meditation is a huge part of that. But
Right.
you want to move, but I don't want to move out of guilt because I used to. I'm not good enough. I'm not perfect enough. I'm going to be on a
Right.
bodybuilding stage. Food was also a place where I ended up loathing myself from. So like the things that are bare necessities in life to live is to eat and to move were my demons and
Triggers.
have been.
Right.
So it's an act to understand that, and then it's another act to move from a place that isn't guided by the triggers, instead of like I move now to because I love myself, or because
Mm-hmm.
it feels good at the end, instead of because I feel fat.
Or because
It's
I'm releasing a happy pill, there will be
Yeah, right.
serotonin. It's actually
Right.
my Prozac.
Right, but I won't even think about
Mm-hmm.
doing it. Like I will sit my ass on the sofa as long as it
Mm-hmm.
takes for me to sit with the pain of thinking that I actually feel like shit, uh
Mm-hmm.
but instead of trying to run it off. And yes, I will always feel better when it's over, but it's kind of like when I tell people who want cake, like the lament of cake after eating it is the problem. So I don't want to lament the exercise after I did it because I did it from a place of pain instead of sitting with the pain, which I think is what most people fear. And it sucks. I'm not gonna lie, it doesn't feel good. An avid crier. I love to release my tension through. I just started literally laughing like a month ago. Up until a month ago, this entire year, it was almost impossible for me to laugh. And
Yeah.
then one day I just belly laughed and it felt amazing. But some people laugh for their releases. I cry. Um,
Yeah.
And so, it's to be cognizant of what I think is our, and not afraid of what our traumas are now teaching us, because that's what they come up. They're going to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's so important to me of what you just said is taking the time to sit with it. Because sometimes we react so quick before even thinking. We have our hand in a bag of Doritos. We don't even know that we've even been triggered.
Yeah.
Or we've
So
snapped at somebody, or we've sent that email that we then later regret. But I think for me, what meditation's helped the most with is actually sitting with something and saying, and just getting curious, where's this coming from?
Yeah.
Why am I feeling this anger inside of me coming up, or whatever it is, like, with certain people, I would have different feelings come up, but I would never even sit with it. Now I get curious. Where's this coming from? Is this me? Is this something I need to look at? But just getting really curious with
Yeah.
what's going on.
I also like to say that I'd like to, if I could change the world, and this podcast alone would be, to unstigmatize the thought of seeking help.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
will say therapists are very hard. Good ones are very hard to come by.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it is, uh, going through a few before you find the one that works. Some people get very lucky the first time.
Yeah,
Some
I
people
do. I think
utilize
you do have to
friends.
interrupt. I think yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, I think you definitely need to interview your therapist and not feel like they know everything either. You have to believe what's telling you inside. For example, if it's not a good match, move on. Don't feel guilty about it. And
Yeah.
some people do. It depends on your friends, but
And I'll also say to find a therapist prior to feeling the pain. Like, if you can just
yeah.
normalize therapy as if it's a,
Mm-hmm.
a counterpart along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I decided somewhere along that if I have my therapist, who I have a new one now that I adore, that if I have him, and I don't need to utilize my boyfriend to be also my sounding board, that he can
Right.
just be my
Right.
boyfriend and then also hear what's going on in my life
Mm-hmm.
without having to take responsibility for any of my shit. I'm taking my shit on my own with somebody who's paid, who has no invested. He doesn't give a shit what I'm doing all day until I say, this is what I did all day and this is how it affects me later.
Right. And I feel like we listen to our therapist more, whether it's conscious or subconscious. But for example, with my daughter, I've been telling her for months, like,
Right.
let's sit down, like, let's meditate together. And I would just get this.
Yes.
I hate meditate, because it was coming from me.
Yes.
But now that it was actually prescribed and there's an accountability log, it's taken on a whole new life where it's almost a time that she and I are able to connect.
Yeah.
We get to find different ones that we like. We get to make a little list, and it's actually been a good thing. So having somebody outside of your inner circle, we just listen to them better. I don't know why.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple reasons. It's that there's
Because they're
no
not invested.
judgment. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
not invested. My boyfriend, just side note, not even mental health, but he's going to physical therapy for his back, when I have all the tools and I'm the best of the best, or whatever people want to call me, and he absolutely will refuse to utilize me. And at first I pushed back and I said, "You, how are you not even going to utilize me for what I do the best at?" And it was just, he's like, "I just want you to be my girlfriend." And I was like,
Yeah.
okay. So I called my dad, who is the best at what he does, and I said, "But your wife utilizes you." I was really hurt by this. Like, why wouldn't, plus I'm in your home and it's a way for us to,
Mm-hmm.
spend some time together, because we don't have a whole lot of time together. Anyway, long story longer, he just comes home now and we just talk about what he did in therapy, and I smile and I nod. Uh-huh. They're doing good. Uh-huh. And I don't say anything, and we have a nice life. It's okay.
Right. So
It's
you let the
totally,
attachment go for that then.
yeah, it was just go and get what you need, because it's like, I go,
Mm-hmm.
I get my stuff done, and I don't have to worry about whatever. And I was like, you're right.
And
That's what it
props
is.
to him,
Right.
honestly, for having
Right.
the courage to speak up, knowing he was going to get backlash from you. But
Yeah.
he actually was able to stand his ground and say, I'm sorry, but this is what's best for me, which is so important. It's very hard, it's one of my big life lessons to speak up for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still in the middle of that. So as you're sharing that story, I'm like, wow, that was really good that he actually didn't back down to that and said, this is the way I'm going to do it.
Yeah. And as you say, it's one of your life lessons. Like it ever stops. Like it's always the life lesson. Like we're
Yeah.
always going to be dealing with this. It's like a constant wolf in sheep's clothing.
Constant. But hopefully, if you get anything from our podcast, you get some tools for these life lessons that will keep happening and that you can deal with them with a smile on your face or those deep belly laughs. Because in my mind, that's what does the most amount of healing is when you can. That's what saved me when my uncle passed away and we had to be part of the whole thing. It was very drawn out. It was over a 5-year process of brain cancer. And I can remember being a little girl and my aunt and I just dying laughing in the hospital. And then we felt guilty. Like, how are we laughing in such a traumatic time? And my uncle was like, that is what's keeping a smile on my face. And we were like, oh. And it was that lesson in that moment. And I still lived in Evansville. So I was 8 or younger. So I was very young when I learned that lesson. And every time something traumatic now happens in my life, I'm like, okay, where can we still laugh? Where can we still find something to laugh about?
Yeah.
So important, I think.
Joy is very healing.
Very healing.
Even if it's temporary or momentary, it's
either way, as long as even that laughter through tears, that was one of my favorite parts in that movie, Steel Magnolias, when if anybody hasn't seen that movie, you have to watch it. But when Julia Roberts passes away and they have the funeral and Sally Field is in the graveyard and she's just bawling. And then Weezer pushes the other lady and says, here, hit this.
Yeah, she's like, I just want to hit something. And she's like, here, hit this. Yeah, it was good. Somebody else used that as a reference too. It's what they were bringing to this world. I feel like it's like a Deborah Messing. I think I was listening to a podcast of hers and she brought up the exact thing that's what she wants to do. No, it's in Chelsea Handler's stand-up. And she talks about that exact thing and says that she wants to be, despite all of her pain, that she is so beautifully put on the forefront for everybody to see, and her times with the therapist and normalizing mental awareness, that it's, mental health awareness, that it's, and she's dug deep and become quite a pivotal person in this big, if you will, come to Jesus that we're having in this world right now.
Yeah.
And she used that example.
Sometimes you can look at that and think, okay, I'm just totally hysterical. I'm laughing, I'm crying, I'm whatever. But in my mind, at least you're feeling something.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
At least you're not numb. At least you're having a release.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think that's one of I think there's so much unknown that happens when we start dealing with like past or pain or trauma, that it's that unknown of what's going to happen or what's going to come up or how's it going to feel. And perhaps part of the stigma of it is this underbelly of pain that might arise. But just by what we're saying is that so many people find humor out of it. Watch any stand-up comedian and they pull from their pain and they make it funny. And we as people can laugh back at them because we resonate and see our pain inside of theirs. And that's therapeutic, right? Like that's when you go, oh, I can shift because this seeing myself exposed through this comedian that is ridiculous and also showing me my pain and truth at the same time. And it's this shift to like, I don't want to do that anymore. Like I look ridiculous to everybody and we're all laughing about it. And to myself.
It's totally the way that we connect. We're never going to connect and we need connection as human beings. We have to have it. We're never going to connect with somebody's perfect image. We're going to connect with the realism of their life, the pain, the things that we've been through. And so when a comedian can take that and we can relate to it and then flip it and cause us to laugh at our own pain, that is so healing.
Yes.
Which is why I love comedians. I secretly have only told maybe a handful of people, but since I've been in high school, I've had this, I suppose it's a fantasy if you want to hear it, but I've
Mm-hmm.
had this deep-seated fantasy of being on Saturday Night Live because it's all impromptu, right?
Yeah.
It's totally in the moment, but
Mm-hmm.
it helps to make people laugh. And I feel like I can get kind of spazzy a little bit sometimes.
You want to channel that into,
Yeah, I want to
yeah,
channel that in. I feel like it would be, I feel like it's super healing. I
yeah,
just do.
it is. It totally is. Like, so this mental health idea doesn't need to be daunting by any stretch. Like, we're all in the same storm, right? But everybody's in different kinds of boats.
Yeah. I mean, there's
And
going to
then,
be shitty days of crying for
oh yeah,
sure, but
no,
then
yeah.
we can also find some humor in those and turn it into your art.
Yeah, and here's another thing, right? There that we'll talk, yes, art is huge. Like whether it's, putting your anguish on a piece of paper and somebody buys it for $1 million. I have always said, I made a post and a quote about this, is that I really believe that when somebody buys a piece of art from somebody else's deep, deep pain, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
music or they're hanging it behind their sofa, that they're paying all this money, that I don't believe that they're buying so much the pain, but the freedom, the person's freedom from the pain that they're
Mm-hmm.
exposing onto the paper. Like, get it out. And that's what I was going to say
Mm-hmm.
next, is that like you don't have to talk to people either. It doesn't have to be talk therapy.
Yeah.
Talk therapy is important
Mm-hmm.
and it does work for some, but sometimes it's a regurgitation of information.
Mm-hmm.
Somatic therapy is supportive, like yoga is a somatic
Mm-hmm.
therapy where, I don't know about you, but there's been many a time in a class where I have just burst out into tears for no damn reason. And it's something that's been locked up and now needs to move. And emotional outbreaks like that don't happen unless you're grounded, safe, and ready. Grounded, safe, and ready. So you could be in the bank somewhere if you're grounded, safe, and ready. And
Shit.
yeah, no, I don't think that's ever happened in the bank. But and who goes into the bank anymore? Anyway, but as long as it moves, it's not something you have to label like, oh, that was a breakup in
Yeah.
1985. It's, oh, something was stuck inside and
Right.
now there's freedom, right? And freedom
Mm-hmm.
exists in the body, then it exists
Mm-hmm.
in the mind, and then you have a choice. I say this at the end of all my classes I would teach. You have a choice, three of them. Fill it with the same shit, fill it
Mm-hmm.
with different shit, or keep it spacious. And keeping it spacious is quite difficult. I understand that people want space, scares people. There's a lot of room and they don't know what to do with space. They will feel insecure about it. But over time, that's where meditation gets you comfortable with the space that you've created. And so, the very least I ask is that you fill it with different shit. Stop putting the same, proverbial beatings inside,
Yeah.
and change to something a little nicer, and then perhaps a little nicer, and then just keep it spacious. That's all.
For sure. Yeah. I feel like that has been a struggle for me, spaciousness. And I'm getting better at that with meditation.
Yeah.
And speaking of the meditation, it's interesting because you talked about how we have an energy and it's a release. And I've heard that many times yoga teachers, I've been taking yoga on and off since I've been 18 years old, talking about how, especially in our hips, saying, and I'm sure you've already heard this, Jamie, but we hold a lot of emotion or trauma in our hips. I have never had an emotional release in the class. And I've always been so jealous of people that have. I'm like, I want to release some shit. And I want it to come out of nowhere. Like, I want it to be one of those things that just shocks me. And I'm like, whoa, like I just had this huge release, this experience. And damn it, it's not happened yet. I hope it does one day. But what was so interesting was the first night that my daughter and I decided to meditate together. And we sat down, we were listening to a guided meditation. And at the end, so I thought she was laughing, but I wanted to be a good role model, so I didn't open my eyes and we just meditated. And at the end, I realized she was bawling. She had this whole emotional release. And then she told me, I thought she was sad. So I was like, are you okay? She's like, I'm so mad. And I was like, what are you mad at? She goes, well, they keep telling me to take a belly breath. What's a belly breath? And her stomach from all her workouts, right, is like a board. So she can't make it like push out. Whereas I clearly have no problem. Like, and it's just like the Pillsbury Doughboy for me going in and out.
Yeah,
And
it's good.
it frustrated her so much, which then led us to perfectionism, right? We're having
Yes.
some where if it doesn't feel because I struggled with that. I actually used to not meditate because I used to feel like, well, they say sit straight up and your spine. And yet I wanted to lay down. And there just was so many rules around everything that at some points in my life, I shut down and did nothing. And I saw that in her. And so I was like, totally fine. We can lay on our back. We'll find one without any deep breathing. But just so you know, it's okay. Anyway, I thought it was cool to see a release happen the very
Well,
first time. It's like the
yeah,
stuff
I
you
mean,
hear about. I want one.
she's not far away from her center. Like she's only
Mm-hmm.
been blocked by life for 12 years,
True.
where we have been beaten, battered, and blocked by life for 40 something, right? You know what I mean? Like
True.
we have bigger walls. So the closer she is and closer people are to their truth, their center, the quicker it will be to release things like that. It's kind of like animals, right? They get hit with a deer gets hit with a car, and if it doesn't die, it shakes it off and it runs away and it's done with it. Like it doesn't lament the car. I mean, which is unfortunate because it doesn't also learn not to run in traffic. But the point is that's how quickly you can release the trauma that when you experience it as trauma.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, we are humans and we like to hold on to it and we like to keep it in deep pockets and we don't like to look at it ever again and we pretend like it's not there. And then here we are midlife and think everything's peachy and we have a nervous breakdown or a
Right.
midlife crisis. Right. I'll tell you,
Right.
it's not just the hips. I want to make this clear because a lot of teachers say it, and it's only true because the musculature and the stature, the way the hip complex is created, is there is a lot going on in there. It's the access point of the body, and it is important and intricate. However, it is. Have you ever stubbed your toe on the bed? And
Yes.
the pain, the crime, and the punishment don't exactly fit the bill. Like you're screaming because of your poor baby toe. There's as much information about your trauma in your toe cells as there is in your hip cells. So sometimes it's easier access by just stubbing your toe, because it's
I have
readily
done
available.
that a lot. So I've just been releasing through my toe. I totally
Correct.
Get this right now.
Yeah, get that. Yes. Yes,
Totally
it's
get this.
absolutely any way that
Okay.
you can get there, but don't rely. I mean, the hips is, all the stuff that we sit on, and our shoulders is the entire
Mm-hmm.
weight of the world. And here's a fun little fact that your jaw muscles are connected to your hip because every time you clench your
Yeah.
jaw, right, it pulls your head forward off the axis, and then your hips must clench to keep you upright. So they're battling. The jaw pulls you forward, and it's the strongest muscle in the body, and next to your tongue. But so it pulls you forward, and so then your hips go, nope, I want you to come back. And so if your jaw is not loose, then your hips are also going to be.
That's so interesting. And I doubt you guys even care about this, but let me just say, I used to have that TMJ so bad.
Yeah.
And my jaw used to be so tight and my jaw would click. And sometimes it would even get stuck. And I would just like, I would just like knock it back into place because it didn't really hurt. And it just went away. It was just one of those things. It just went away naturally. And I was like, that's weird. My jaw is normal now. I bet that means I had released something. And
Sure.
I also used to have sciatic nerve stuff really bad to where I would just be walking, it would come out of the blue and I almost would like lose my balance, and say I have to sit down. And that just went away.
Yeah. Back pain is never from your back anymore, like as an adult.
Right. That's what I was going to ask
unless
you.
it's blunt force trauma, like if I punched you in the back, your back would hurt for obvious reasons. But it's the external, it's the extremities that pull or twist or turn that have become tight and rigid. Like the places that we're actually looking for space is in the hips and the shoulders, because they're the conduit into action. And when we become rigid, if you can just envision like an 80-year-old, 90-year-old person who shuffles across the street with their rounded shoulders, is that their range of motion is so slight, and that their muscles as well as their bones are so rigid that they're not moving with any flow of life, and that they've been weathered with their storms, right? Instead of being open and free and moving. And if you ask somebody of that age, it's a slight wind from the east that'll push them over, and because they don't have any lateral movement, they fall, and when they fall, they break a hip, and then when they break a hip, they're in therapy, and then they actually have to move in a full range of motion,
Mm-hmm.
which if they would have been doing that in the first place, they would have never fallen. But if you ask an old person who, or they could be very young, shoot, I've seen some 11-year-olds that are pretty similar, which scares me because it's either,
Well,
life is
Will would be pretty rigid,
right. Well, right.
because of
Like
his muscles being stiff and not more. Of course, his is more from trauma. I get that, but it's still
trauma's trauma. Like
right.
our body, our mind knows no difference between mental trauma and
Mm-hmm.
physical trauma. It holds it the exact same way.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't even know the difference. So, to move, to be mobile is to release whatever it is, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's physical trauma, physical pain, or if it's mental pain that you've been holding on to, because they kind of go together. Like imagine a car accident, right? Like if you get hit from the side and
Mm-hmm.
you're in trauma, you get hit, there's physical
Yeah.
action, and then now you're worried about ever getting in the car again because you don't ever want to get hit by another car. You know what I'm saying? So if you ask them to move, they'll always tell you, I don't want to, it hurts. But sometimes you have to get through the pain, which is the same exact thing you say to somebody who has,
Yeah.
that doesn't want to look into their mental or
Mm-hmm.
their emotional world, is that it might hurt. And so sometimes you just have to go through a little bit of pain to experience an immense amount of freedom. It's
Mm-hmm.
just that little speed bump that you go, okay, it's only going to hurt for today or this week or for physical movement, right? But you'll be able to move more freely and then be able to respond to the wind that once blew you
Mm-hmm.
over. And so in this work we call it resiliency. And you want resiliency. You don't want to be so fragile that life beats you up in all directions, but that you're able to see things coming and then assimilate them, digest them. And not only are you doing that with food, but with thought. It's really quite beautiful if it just moves instead
Yeah.
of holding on to it.
And if somebody that's listening to this is feeling that their mental health is being really tried right now, say
Yeah.
it's depression, they're overwhelmed, or they're having trouble just getting through the day. I know for myself, when I am feeling depressed, I have a hard time getting through the day. My energy is so low that I will not even really make myself food. I'll do like a smoothie, or I'll do like cheese and crackers and grapes, but I don't even have the energy to fix food.
Yeah.
And that's when I know, for me, like that's a sign, okay, Laura, you need to check in.
Yeah.
Because my whole life, when things aren't going well, for me, food equates happiness and joy. It's a festive time. If I'm not doing well, I don't eat. It's just, for me, that's how I do. I know other people then feed it, and I know we all handle things different.
Right.
But where would we suggest somebody starts? Like, how do you first even see the signs? Then when you do, you're already overwhelmed. For me, the example I use, I'm too overwhelmed to even make freaking food. Where do I start?
Uh, I always tell people like a deep breath, like something that you
Mm-hmm.
can put between you and anything else is breath. It's
So
just a
creating the
moment,
space.
creating the space.
Okay.
And at first it's going to be the space between you and something else instead of you and you, right? It's
Yeah.
just move away from the um, external stimuli, and
Okay.
then
So
to check
shutting
in
off
is
your
good.
phone,
Yeah.
for one. Please,
Yeah.
if you see or you feel this overwhelm, the first thing I would suggest you do is shut off your phone. And as Jamie said, then create that space by maybe even closing your eyes and just taking a breath.
Yeah. If closing your eyes
And
doesn't work, just look down the tip of your nose.
or
Sometimes
just look
going,
down and maybe even letting out a loud sigh. And if you're even
absolutely.
comfortable, I would even suggest even a yell, like get something moving.
I'll tell you this, and I've been doing, and I'm only gonna. Some people are. Remember, we had this conversation before. Is that anger and rage is for unfamiliar to me. So if you are like me and listening to this, yelling
Mm-hmm.
isn't easy. I went on a. I live in a condo complex, and so um, I was in a bit of an argument with my boyfriend. Everything's fine, um, but I needed to get something out. I can't do it in this place because God knows the police will be called, and they're doing their job, and they should if they heard this kind of blood curdling scream that I really needed to get rid of. But I went on a drive into no man's land out here in the mountains, and it took a minute. Like I had to sit in my car and evoke, like I started to sing to use my voice, but that comes
Yeah.
from a different place. And then the singing I did, I was like, this isn't working. And then I just opened my mouth and I
Hmm.
waited for something to come out. It is not easy for me to channel rage or anger. It's not. And I'm
It's
trying because
not
I
easy
can
for
feel
me.
it.
Yeah, for me anymore either. Like if I were to let out a blood curdling scream, honestly, I don't know that I could get there.
Yeah.
But when I was a kid, I could.
Sure,
When I
sure,
was a kid,
sure.
I really could. And that actually helped me. And obviously I lived in a home with, there was six of us. I had four siblings. I would use a pillow.
Yeah.
I would actually put a pillow, a couple over my mouth.
I'm
And sometimes I would even let them know, I'm going to scream because I need to.
yeah.
But I think that letting something out of that
Yeah.
pressure cooker, I really think just set aside the space and let something out, whether it's a scream or it's singing or it's dancing, but something that takes you out of the routine.
Precisely that. That's exactly what it is. You have to change the momentum or the trajectory of the
Hmm.
direction that you're going, regardless of what it is. So if you're going down a dark hole, turn
Hmm.
around. Like that's
Right.
it. Just turn around
That's it.
and or turn left. Like do
Yeah.
something.
Go for a drive, play different music. I feel like I used to, I remember I went through a depression time in college, and I would just beat it. It was like, okay, I'm feeling really depressed. So I'd pick out like the most depressing music I could
Yeah.
find, and then I would watch like movies that made me cry.
Yeah.
And at first, it was good. I mean, I got some stuff out, but then for after a while, I was just feeding it
Yeah.
until I realized, then joy, laugh. Like you've got to change it up.
Yeah, there's
Something to
times where
change it up.
I've also I've used it because I could feel it. So I think
Yeah.
if you don't know you're en route to overwhelm and you have to hit the wall of overwhelm, these are good tools where once you experience overwhelm, then you have to turn the car around and go the other direction.
Yeah.
If you can be present on a daily to check in so you're monitoring yourself in a way that is not so extreme where you don't have to get
Right.
to overwhelm, but you can say, this conversation with Laura today bothered me. And that is today and right now. But if you don't acknowledge that today and right now that this conversation bothered you, it's going to sit with you. And then it's going to be one of the things that turns you into overwhelm later. And you don't have the finite point of what the hell, how did I get here? It's just one of the things in your pot that's going to eventually
Yeah.
boil over. But if you and I are having this conversation, Laura, and you say something and I feel it, we talk about this almost every episode, but if I feel it and it hits me in my gut and I go, oof, like that didn't feel right that you said that. And then I either address it with you, did you mean to hurt my feelings? Or wow, why did this hurt my feelings? And then I take it head on. It doesn't turn into anything overwhelming. It just is,
Right.
oh, okay, I must
Handling
be.
it when it happens.
Yes, yes, or at least close. Like my mom will
Yeah.
tell you, she's like, I can't think of good comebacks, or I can't think of sticking up for myself in the moment. And I was like, okay, go home, take a deep breath, and if you have to call me in a day and tell me
Write
that I
down
hurt your
all your
feelings,
comebacks and then text them
right,
all to me.
right. But she's still bitching about shit that happened 4 years ago, and I'm like, you can't go back and tell somebody that a sentence they said 4 years ago bothered you because they don't remember. It's skin off their
Yeah.
back, right? So
Well, at
anyway,
that point, that's something I would say, you need to work on within yourself
yeah,
if you're still
yeah.
letting that bother you. But I have a couple crystal recommendations for when you are feeling totally overwhelmed. And I actually just did this on was it my Instagram? I posted it.
Yeah, I think you put it
Overwhelmed.
everywhere, didn't you? Well, we did YouTube and Instagram, I think.
Oh, yes, it was a video. That's right. Oh my gosh. So that's one of my signs for me when I'm overwhelmed is I get very, very forgetful. Totally forgetful. For
Noted.
example, totally. Yes, noted. I get very forgetful because I will do too many things at once and then I'll be like, oh my God, I don't even know what I'm doing. But again, that I think I've used list and busy. Been a diversion. It was a diversion
Sure.
when Will first had his accident. Now I just truly am busy. But um, lepidolite.
Oh, that's so pretty.
So if you aren't watching, if you're just listening to us, lepidolite is like a lilac in color. You can get different ones. Some are more pinky, but what I love about lepidolite is it has lithium in it. So it's instead of taking the lithium, you can put it on your skin. Your skin's your largest organ. Hopefully some lithium will just soak in from the
Right.
stone.
Right.
And it's very much connected to the crown chakra, which is our thinking, our brain, and helping just to relax our brain a little bit, helping us to be more centered, more focused. And it's a great stone to meditate with.
I love that.
Do you have any lepidolite?
Um, I don't
I
think
think,
I don't think I do. I
hmm,
don't know why I don't.
I'm surprised. The
Yeah,
other one, and I say this one a lot, you guys, but I just really feel it.
it's
And this is
beautiful.
selenite. So this is like clear, pure selenite. I wish if you are just listening, just know it's absolutely beautiful. And I got this one in Utah because they mine it a lot in Utah. So these are the lepidolites. A lot of people, selenite, I'm
Here we
sorry.
go.
These are the selenites that a lot of people will see. They're a little
Yeah,
bit more cloudy.
yeah,
That's because it's a lot of feldspar in it. So if you want a pure one, it's going to look more like this.
it's so cool.
People use these as cleansing plates. So you can buy large plates of them and you can
Oh
actually
yeah.
put all your other crystals on them, your jewelry on them, because they are very, very cleansing. So when I'm feeling overwhelmed, I like to take it and actually run it over my body, over my energy field, and just get rid of anything that might be sticking to me. I feel like our body's like a magnet. So sometimes, like if we go into the grocery store or someplace else, we may be picking up stuff that's not even ours.
Yeah,
So it's nice
100%.
to, yeah, just give yourself a really nice cleanse. It's also connected to the crown and higher chakras, cleansing out that overactive mind. I actually sleep with mine. And yeah, the other one I wanted to talk to you about, black tourmaline
Nice. Yeah.
or even smoky quartz, just to help ground you.
Hmm.
And I know Jamie and I've talked a lot. She's been like, Laura, where's your grounding crystals? You need them probably more than anybody I know. And then I'll show her my wrists and I'll have like only
All the
light,
lights. Yeah.
right? All the lights. And she'll just be like, yes, that explains so much.
Right.
But
Then I
so
say
that's
eat some
another
curry.
one.
Just kidding.
Yes, eat some curry, something grounding, some warm soups, something
Nurture yourself.
earthy. Eat a potato, for God's sakes. So
Yeah.
anyway, those are my three that I would really recommend. The black tourmaline is actually very heavy. If you have a piece, it like instantly grounds you. It makes you feel anchored. Anchored.
Nice.
It's very nice, and I would really recommend walking barefoot outside. Just
Brilliant advice.
please stand barefoot, soak up some of those negative ions, and let them just heal you. Disconnect for a minute
Yeah.
and to connect.
So we are in
Yeah.
December, and there are quite a few people who are in a place where barefoot in the snow or ice doesn't sound very good. There are, and I don't have a company to plug, it doesn't matter, but there are grounding mats available that are fairly
Biomats,
inexpensive.
I think.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
have
you can
one.
sleep on them, you can sit on them, you can
Yeah.
stand on them, you can put them underneath your desk. If you're working from home or even at work, it doesn't matter. But like, and then you can take your shoes off there and put your feet on them,
Mm-hmm.
just so that you're not sliding and slipping on ice or snow or the pavement is
No, but
okay, but grass and sand and dirt are so much more effective.
so much better. But what I would say you could do, like I'm from Indiana, and it would get, below zero, very, very cold. Just even if you could even stand outside for a minute to change up your routine,
Yeah.
having that burst of cold air just even hit your face,
Yeah.
just being outside. But anyway, those are my recommendations. And to start small is my other recommendation, to give yourself really small goals and to even write them down, whether it's on a sticky note. For me personally, I need to see them and feel like I have been accountable to something. And sometimes when I write it down, that I'm just accountable to what that freaking piece of paper says. But it
Right.
works for me.
Right. I those things don't. So if those things don't work for you, whoever's listening, that's okay. But it's just making yourself more important than the external factors that are happening. Like
Mm.
you have to live with you for your life, and your life is valuable and worth it, and you're here for a reason, and whatever's behind the overwhelm or the trauma is temporary if you're willing to take the little steps to get through it. It's so worth it and so freeing. So and if you need support, I mean, Laura and I help others, and then there's therapists and friends. I wouldn't boggle too many friends because they've got personal investment with you. I'm guessing, you know, they want you to be better, and some people like to commiserate with, so they're going to just let your pain stay painful, and they're going to tell you about their pain, and that's how
Mm-hmm.
people tend to, you know, be friends. But it's not going to get you
Mm-hmm.
through the muck. It's going to probably keep you in it or cause more. So I'd say, you know, seek professional support. But I think it's time. I think that that's what this 2020 has certainly reached out to help us with, is so we can move into something greater, like whatever the age of Aquarius is going to present for us.
Yeah. Google that for sure. And Jamie,
Definitely.
you mentioned something at the beginning of this podcast, a study or something. If you can find that, maybe we can even link that to this, because that would be kind of cool for people to read.
Which one, the gut one or the?
The gut one. That was it.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
think that was it. And there's so much out there, even just the gut brain connection that I'm doing on a
yeah,
different level with my son for healing his brain injury. But
yeah,
everything starts in the gut.
yeah. I don't even think one link is necessary. That is so Googleable and so much more
True.
well known. And Ayurveda has been preaching gut health for, that's their mission, is everything stems in the gut. So if you're at all interested in Ayurveda, that this is the root, this is how it all comes in. What I love about Ayurveda and its healing mechanisms is that it sees a person as a whole and understands that if you're having some stomach issues, if you're that they see it as all the things that it is also contributing to, and if you're having like rash issues, that it's
Mm,
also stems in the gut. So Ayurveda
gut.
understands its root purpose or root area. So anyway, it's a nice if you're interested, it's a nice place to start because it already understands this as its main science.
I'm sorry. I'm just laughing because you said Googleable.
Googleable?
Googleable.
Yeah,
So
Googleable.
I liked our new vocabulary word for the
Yeah,
day.
it's an ism, I'm guessing.
Yes, I think so.
So fun.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think we're all done with this. Who knows what number podcast?
Right. The next one.
Yes.
This
And we'll see you at the next one. And we would love to hear feedback and suggestions.
Yes, we're all in.
Yeah.
It's nice to be back with you. Good to see your
Yeah.
face if you're watching our video. Otherwise, it's nice to hear your voice, Laura.
You too, Jamie.
And we'll see you soon.
Okay.